Hi, my name's Dr. Kelly Clarke, and today I wanted to talk a little bit about parenting skills, basic parenting skills. I might even call this Parenting 101. I certainly don't want to come across like I am an expert on all children's behaviors. I'm a father myself, and to be honest, going through raising two boys, there are many times where even, despite having lots of experience working with, I've worked for 18 years working with extreme behavioral challenged kids in a treatment center, working with the government. And so I worked with many children and adolescents that struggled with behavior, emotions, had depressive features. And so I feel like I have a good background, but I don't think any of it truly prepared me for being a father. And like many people joke, you have a test for driving, but we don't have information or tests really for becoming a parent. I think a lot of us just instinctively, including myself, kind of reinstituted parenting that we found favorable for our own parents. And I know that in my situation, my parents are fantastic parents, great parents. Of course, they had their shortfalls, and I learned that there were some things that I didn't want to repeat. And I think for a lot of parents, I have actually quite enjoyed meeting with some of the parents in my community, and I'll go at times and talk with fathers. So the first thing I wanted to bring up is building a community of parents that you spend time with, because I have found, even though I've training in psychology and I've worked with many challenging behaviors and dispositions before, I've found it both refreshing, encouraging, supportive to learn from those around me. So I've was just this weekend listening to two fathers telling me that they were taking their kids out and cleaning garbage, in the local areas in the community, and again teaching these great values to their kids, and then even supper time routines, and building a sense of fostering their own children's sense of that I have something important to say. So many great things, of course, we can learn from each other, and that's one of the first things that I wanted to mention. I also wanted to mention that I'm with all of you, of course, because I'm a dad and I've made my own mistakes and have hopefully learned from some of them. But I wanted to give some simple guidelines to parenting that maybe you might find helpful. And certainly I think my wife and I have found that they've been helpful in guiding us as well. So the first big thing that I wanted to say, I think probably was impressed on me when I was 16 years old. And we had a neighbor kid who was quite a sweet kid. He was about 8 or 9 years old. And I went outside. I'm 16 at the time, so not thinking about parenting for sure. To the appreciation of my parents, I'm sure about that. But I went out there, and this 8 or 9-year-old was cleaning his dad's car. And so as I got closer, I realized he was using an SOS pad, which is one of those really abrasive pads, and he's actually cleaning the metal, the paint on top of his dad's car. The dad came out there and just was incensed, just lost it. So angry on this little guy whose intention was just to impress his dad, help his dad out. What a conflict of feelings I felt, because I love performance vehicles. I race dirt bikes, and I could appreciate the dad being upset over this car being, scuffed up. And yet this kid, who he doesn't know better, he's just trying to love on his dad and do something nice. Well, the dad was out of control. I felt actually quite sad. And at 16, I think probably now I would have said something, but it was so uncomfortable for me at that age that I felt really sad for that little guy, because the dad was calling him names and berating him, and it was just really a poor moment. I have no idea if this dad was, say a really value-driven father and caring in most of the time, but in that moment, he was not. And so the first thing that I really wanted to point out is that, like the Mellencamp, John Cougar Mellencamp song, I like that he said that if you can't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. And so I think going into parenting, it's a good idea for us as parents to have a good conversation with each other about our values. Oftentimes we're not aware of what our values are, and they become more clear as we're parenting. But I think some of those things are really good conversations to have. So for example, my wife and I, one of our values is that we try not to parent in anger. So anytime that and of course I'm human, and of course our kids can be very annoying at times and frustrating, right? They get the best of our nerves. Even the most peacemaking and patient parents will at times lose their temper. And of course, I'm not saying that, you should never lose your temper, but just being aware that, boy, I'm losing my ability to parent effectively. My anger's taking over. I need to take a second, let my wife take over, because that's a value of ours. So I'm encouraging you to think about what are some of my guiding philosophical parenting ideas that we want to have going forward. I think it's very important, because if we don't have those, we'll default to anything in the moment. So for example, for my wife and I, when we get overly annoyed, we try to take a break. We try to get back to that more emotional state that's conducive to effective parenting. I also wanted to mention that I think having kids is really quite like a mirror to our own things, to our own issues. And I think this was really surprising, even captivating, even interesting point for me, because as a psychologist, I'm very much curious about why do I do what I do? What triggered those what set that off? What does this remind me of from when I was younger? And so my kids are very much a mirror to my own issues. So rather than blame them for me getting them late to school for the fifth time this week, recognizing that, me not getting better organized or getting them set up, even though they're dilly-dallying and those kind of things, my own need, say for control, or my need for them to listen to everything that I say, might be reflective of something that's deeper in my own life. Was I, in speaking to myself, was I a kid that was not listened to, say by, other kids, or by friends, or, even my parents at times? Was that setting off? When my kids don't listen to me, do I kind of go off the deep end? That might be a trigger point for me. So I think it's really important for us to realize our kids are mirrors to our own issues. It's a real chance for you to gain insight into your own past pains, own past hurts, and your own triggers. So having kids actually is as much teaching them as it's teaching us. So I think that's another important thing. What is this teaching me? If I'm getting so incensed, so fumed, so impatient by my kid, what's going on for me in this moment that is setting me off and creating this big reaction? I also think that I've read many parenting books, and I like a lot of them. I appreciate a lot of the wisdom and guidance in many of them. They're by Daniel Siegel. He talks about flipping the lid. When kids flip their lid, they're no longer able to listen to our great speeches and talks, so I often will try to impart this wisdom to my kids. Of course, I think we should. As parents, we're teaching them life skills, we're teaching them wisdom, things that we think are important, helped us get through life. Of course, that's important. But at certain times, right, that they're not going to receive it, even if we say it 2-3 different times, they're not going to receive this, hey, son, it is important to clean that up this way, because, it creates less of a mess and, all over the place. And they're not going to go, oh yeah, well, that's great, Dad. Thank you. I'm going to take notes and write that down right now. Most of the times, my kids don't do that. It's me getting frustrated that they're not learning. Sometimes they'll appreciate it, but they're certainly not going to get that when they're upset, when their emotions are dictating their thoughts and their decision making. And so clearly one of the things that I think is important is not talking too much. So one of the things, again, something that I'm very quite value driven on, and I notice my own tendency to repeat myself. Once I'm repeating once or twice, it's time to take a break. And so these are some of the things I wanted to see if you also notice that. I think that we talk too much as parents. We try to give the same message, and we try to expect them to gain insight into an adult concept that they're probably not capable of getting at that time anyway. So when they get really emotionally disturbed, allowing them to have that space and allowing them to have that moment just to vent and express their feelings. That's another thing that I wanted to bring up, is developmental considerations. So again, none of us as parents would it's not beyond us to go, hey, when they're babies, we shouldn't ask them to do chores. It's just obviously something that we couldn't ask them for because they can't get up and move around. But the same kind of thing is with them emotionally and cognitively. They cannot, organize or remember to do the cleaning of the room like we can at, say, 3, 4, 5, 6. So having that kind of developmental patience and expect reasonable outcomes for them at a certain age. Again, back to patience, and again, managing our own expectations and emotions. So for me, I think that developmental awareness of what kids are capable of is very important. And so, for example, back to the emotional part, I think us as parents, one of our big jobs is helping them to manage and move through their emotions in a healthy way. I do counseling with so many individuals that have felt that as children, their parents didn't allow space for them to feel. And I can see, the old kind of challenges. I want this kid to listen. I want them to obey. I want them to follow the rules, because our fear is if they don't, they're going to become this social pariah and not follow the rules of society. But I think that we need to be careful, of course, to bring alongside those, limits and expectations, but also in keeping with treating their emotions with respect and value, and that we now need to allow a space and help guide them move through that. So for me, when my children were tantruming at, say, at around that 2-3 year age, I didn't stop them from tantruming. In fact, I helped to facilitate that tantrum. So, if they were hitting their head with something, then I would give them a soft teddy bear or something rather than some item that might have hurt them. But I wanted to help them move through their emotions. I wanted to help validate those feelings. You look like you're very upset and angry or frustrated or sad right now that that ball fell down the stairs. And so identifying, validating, and giving them emotional language, I think, is very helpful and important, and also giving room for them to feel those things, I think, is such an important thing in the development of our children. So I really want to talk about the importance of allowing our kids to feel and not telling them how to feel. Oh, that was nothing. Oh, that ball rolling down come on, you're way exaggerating that. That's ridiculous. Stop doing that. Stop feeling. And I don't know how many times I've been in a line when the kids were young and hearing parents doing a great job with this, but other times, hearing them go, you know what, you shouldn't feel that because now you're 3 years old and, big girls don't cry anymore. So really allowing their children to move through these emotions, knowing that developmentally they're going to reduce these kind of tantrums. And if they're able to successfully move through those things in a healthy developmental way, they will reduce. So just being aware, for me, that's a very strong value that I think is important for us as parents. But Daniel Siegel would also talk about, how do we actually deal with kids during a tantrum, or especially as they're getting older, and we want to, deal with how are some consequencing techniques that we could use. One of the things that was really big for him that I thought I appreciated quite a bit was he's not into isolating kids. So at 3-4 years old, sending a kid off to their room, sending them on a timeout, and these kind of, is not something he would recommend. And I really strongly advocate for that. So again, just the idea of, should we just stay there with our children, support and validate their emotions. Even one of our kids would say, I need time alone. Just let me go. Just be away from me. And so we would just be close by, just allowing them to have their feelings. But I remember watching them look up to see if I was close by. And if I actually left them isolated, I think that would have hurt one of our boys. So just being really aware that I think that we are almost emotional coaches, helping them move through these difficult emotions, because it's just chaotic for them. They don't have the same resources we do. So I think helping them is a great idea. Not isolating the kids during those times is a great idea, especially before 5 years old. And then, of course, as they get older, we can start, I think, implementing things like timeouts for some negative behaviors. Again, not, up and away from us, but giving them a sense that is socially inappropriate. And of course, within, say, a limited time frame, a shorter time frame, and getting them to explain why that they were sent on a timeout, so they get some cognitive insight as to the behavior. These are good things. So, and then speaking about some of those behavioral kind of strategies, because I did and used many of those working with these extreme behavioral disordered kids that I was talking about, just some basic some basic ideas on behavioral management that I wanted to talk about. So as parents, oftentimes there's many great skills that we use, but I wanted to talk about natural and logical consequences. Maybe you've heard about this. So a natural consequence is a consequence that flows naturally out of a situation. So the child is tantruming a little bit, drops their ice cream they have on the ground, and the ants eat it, and it's all dirty. So that's a natural consequence. Yeah, I'm sorry that you're frustrated now that you dropped that. But of course, if you're going to jump around and dance when you've got that ice cream and it drops on the ground, it's a natural consequence. Now you're without the ice cream. So there's many versions of natural consequences that we don't even really have to do much as parents, but they'll experience them. We don't want to keep those experiences from them though as well. And then a logical consequence. So I remember when I was a kid, I threw a baseball through a glass window. And I think my parents grounded me for a few days. I think what a logical consequence is tying a consequence logically to the behavior. So in that case, it's probably better to get me to pay for that window. So hopefully, I'm 7 or 8 or 9 at the time I think I was. Maybe the parents are now taking some money out of my allowance, but paying for that window would be a more logical consequence. So when we're thinking about consequences, let's connect it logically to the behavior that the child was enacting. Not positive and negative reinforcement. You might have heard these things before. Our kids, we wanted to help them develop some writing skills and some homework at certain times of the day. And of course, they don't want to do it. Like most kids, they're not too eager to do homework. So we looked for something that was a positive reinforcement. So for our kids, watching a little bit of TV is a positive reinforcement. What's a reinforcement? A reinforcement is a activity or a stimuli that will reinforce or increase the likelihood of a behavior happening. So we wanted them to increase the likelihood of them doing homework. So we said, okay, if you finish this homework, we'll give you half an hour of TV watching. So that increased their likelihood of finishing the homework we gave them. And so we wouldn't give them the TV first before they completed their homework. They completed the homework, and then reinforcing that activity by providing TV reinforce the likelihood that they'll do homework again. Negative reinforcement, a good example. So this is the taking away of a stimuli. So in positive reinforcement, we're providing a positive stimuli like TV. Negative reinforcement, where we're taking away something that's likely to increase the likelihood of a behavior. So reinforcing a behavior. This is so that annoying noise that the seatbelt makes when I get in my car, ding, 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 is an example of negative reinforcement. I'm annoyed by this behavior, so it's now trying to increase the likelihood of my behavior, me snapping my seatbelt in, so to get that noise go away. So it's this negative thing, the application for me of this bell, I want it to go away. So that increases the likelihood of my behavior by reducing that sound. So by taking it away, now I've increased a behavior. So negative reinforcement is when we take something away that will increase the likelihood of behavior. This is not to be confused with punishment. So punishment, of course, gets a bad rap, but we do apply positive and negative punishment. So punishment by definition, rather than reinforcement, which increases the likelihood of behavior, punishment reduces the likelihood of a behavior. So for example, I'm going to take away your TV for a day. So I'm going to punish, if you're punishing a child, so negative punishment is taking away an activity or a stimuli like TV to reduce the likelihood of a behavior. That is, I'm going to take this away if you don't clean up. And so that behavior, you take something away because they didn't do a behavior, you didn't clean up, so now I'm going to take away your TV. So that's called negative punishment. Positive punishment is when you apply something to them so that they are going to also reduce a behavior. So, okay, you just didn't do that chore there, I'm giving you another chore. So you're now giving them another chore, and so you're hoping that's going to reduce the likelihood of them not completing the chore again. So there's some basic behavioral management strategies with kids. I think we often kind of get those confused. And so you may want to try some of those things in helping your kids, to manage their behaviors. And I wanted to bring those up for you as a little bit of ideas to help our kids to engage in some behaviors that are more pro-social and ultimately help them feel better about themselves and interacting with people. For more information, I encourage you to take a look at drkellyclarke.com or Clarke Psychological Services.com. And I'm thankful that you have checked in today, and have a great day. Enjoy your children and enjoy being a parent.